Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hi there. Hi there. Hi. We had a specific, hi, Karen. We had a specific
Hi.
slide to open and it kind of disappeared. Hi, Karen. How are you? So,
I'm good. That's
I'm
our
good.
old
That's our
logo. Is
old
there
logo. Is
anybody
there
who can take that
anybody who can
off?
take that off? Oh, that's your old logo. Okay. Hang on. I'm going with the email that I received. Hang on.
That's from a
That's from
year
a
ago.
year
I
ago.
would
I
love
would
to
love
have
to
the
have
new one
the
on
one on
there.
there. Okay, hang
I have a
on. I have a
lot of
lot of
feedback.
feedback. Can you, I'm going to put my headphones on. If everyone can mute their microphone except for Karen, we jumped into it and we had a pre-show and then I asked Katie, can you mute everybody, Katie, except for me and Karen? Karen, are you there?
I'm here.
I'm here. Okay, so I got an email from Ella, then I got an email from Carol. She's having,
Carol's here though.
oh, is she? Okay, great. So, ping me the logo right now and we'll put it up. I Googled, searched my logo inbox from you from K Bruce, and that's what came up.
Yeah, sorry. I for sure haven't said that to you recently because anyway, it's fine. I just would rather not have a logo than have the old one, to be honest.
Well, just
Um,
feel free to ping me your logo. I can
when
forward
you
it to
say
Katie.
ping in what way? Text? Yeah,
Send
to
it
my
to me.
email?
Just yeah, or you can put it in the stream. You can attach it and put it in the private. I don't know. Email it to me at femalifefilmfestival@gmail, and I'll send it to Katie.
Excellent. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Standing by.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us on Sunday. It's a very rainy, gray Sunday in Toronto.
It is. And I am here. And Carol, you made it in. Yay! We had, uh, did you send it to Female Eye Film Festival, Karen? Yep. Okay. Got it. We had an older logo. All right, here we go. I'm going to send it to Katie. Everybody stand by. I received a whole bunch of emails in the minutes before. WIFT logo. Here we go. Update.
Tanya, are you in LA? Have you had your first JAG? Your first needle
I have.
vaccine? No. You have, Leslie?
Yeah, I do relief work on the front lines of violence against women within the Indigenous community here at Andion in Toronto. I've been doing it for a million years. I'm crisis support. And yeah, so I got mine a week ago and I'm getting the second one on April 17th.
Wow, amazing.
Really? I don't know. I was really not wild about the idea at first, but my mom's a survivor. She actually survived COVID in the first wave. So in part, I'm doing it for her as well.
I had it in January, so I'm like all about getting the vaccine, man. My mom got it this week and I'm delighted for her.
Did you get sick?
Yeah, I wasn't hospitalized, but yeah, I was out of commission and I'm still feeling after effects of it.
Don't tell me that. I almost died from the flu vaccine in 2016. That's why, or 2014. That's why I've been resistant to getting immunized because I'm really hypersensitive to vaccinations.
Well,
Anyway,
I'm
this is a whole
hyper
other.
excited to get my vaccination.
Don't, okay, we're going to talk later. I want to know how long you were sick for so I can be mentally, physically prepared. I'm going to go sleep in a barn with horsepower to get better faster. Okay.
So are we live now, Leslie?
Well, we are, but it's okay. The beautiful thing about StreamYard is we can trim it. And I know this is a little unconventional for an opening, but we'll jump right in. So
Okay.
welcome everyone to the 19th Female Eye Film Festival. We are celebrating we're actually in our 20th year, but we're celebrating our 19th edition. We missed a year, excuse me, in 2004. And I'm really excited to be here and I'm really delighted that my team, thank you to all my volunteers from Humber College and our sponsor Ontario Creates for supporting the virtual industry initiative sessions. I really appreciate all of you being here. And I just want to respectfully acknowledge that we are situated on the traditional territories and treaty lands, in particular those of the Mississaugas, the New Credit First Nations, as well as the Anishinaabe of the Williams Treaty, First Nations, the Huron-Wendat, and the Métis Nation. As representatives of the people of Woodbridge, Ontario, and Vaughan, we are grateful to have this opportunity to work and live on this land. I want to introduce the lovely and talented and brilliant Karen Bruce, Executive Director of Women in Film and Television Toronto, who will be moderating the panel.
Thank you very much, Leslie Ann. Hi, everyone. As Leslie Ann just said, I'm Karen Bruce, and I'm the Executive Director of WIFT Toronto, and I am thrilled to be here. And I want to thank everyone who's joining us on a Sunday afternoon. I'm going to introduce each of our panels. I will just say, unfortunately, with regrets, we are missing Ella Cooper from Black Women Film. She was unable to join us today last minute due to an illness. So she sends her regrets and apologizes for not being able to join us. I'm just going to throw it over to each of our panelists today and ask them to introduce themselves briefly, and then we're going to go into a bit of a discussion. There will be time for questions and questions with answers, so please use the question on the side there, and we'll get to as many as possible in the time we have. I'm going to ask, and I feel like we could have a panel discussion with each of these brilliant women individually for an hour. So we'll try to cover as much ground as we can. I'm going to throw it over to who I see my first box, which is Aisha Jamal, who is representing Women in View. She's on the board there to say hello and do an introduction.
Hi, everyone. My name is Aisha Jamal. As Karen said, I've been on the board of Women in View for about 6 years now. And I'm excited to talk about some of the initiatives that we've been doing over the last couple of years, but I won't say too much up front. So thank you for inviting me to this panel.
Great, thank you. And Ms. Tanya Williams. You're on mute, Tanya.
I knew there was something wrong. Hi there. Tanya Williams, founder, executive director of Real World Film Festival, Real World Screen Institute, and now Access Real World as of last year. And the focus of Real World is, for Black, Indigenous, and people of color who are in the screen industry, in front of or behind the cameras. We've been working for the last 21 years in making sure that their voices are heard, that there's a spotlight on the inequities and the racism that is within that industry, and creating more opportunities and access for that group of people. And of course, as Aisha said, we'll be talking more about it with the questions. So that's it for now.
Definitely. And we'll get into, if anyone listening has not already seen, Women in View released their on-screen executive summary this week. And we did a panel with the WIFT Canada Coalition about it with Tracy Deer and Jill Golick and Natalie Youngley talking about some of that. And we're going to get into that, which feeds into what all of us are here for. But before, please help me welcome Dr. Carol Whitman, who is with Women in the Director's Chair.
Thanks, Karen. It's Carol Whiteman here. I'm based in Vancouver, BC, and I'm a settler here on these unceded and traditional lands of the Coast Salish people, the Squamish, the Tsleil-Waututh, and the Musqueam, and I'm the co-creator, or a co-creator, of the Women in the Director's Chair program, and I've been producing that initiative here in Canada for the last 25 years. We're about to launch our 25th anniversary coming up in June this year. So that's a hint towards some of the things that we're looking forward to in the next fiscal.
Excellent. And I'm sorry, because I do know your last name. I apologize for that. All right. What I would love to do, and then, Leslie, you've already introduced me, but why don't we talk about, you just do a quick introduction as far as the festival goes, and then we'll get into discussion.
So the Female Eye has been celebrating women on screen since 2001. Films are directed by women from all over the world, and we also have mentored and produced 46 short films. 26 of those were directed by first-time Indigenous filmmakers, which we've presented at the festival over the years. And we're doing a lot of community screenings and co-presentations with sister film festivals abroad, the Flying Broom in Turkey, Kin Women's Film Festival, FemCine just now in April, and the Beirut International Women's Film Festival. We did a co-presentation with them back a few months ago. So we're joining with other femme-centric film festivals, and that's been really exciting over the last 5 years.
Excellent. All right. I want to go into, and I know Tanya spoke a little bit about this, but I'd love to get from each of you sort of the short, I guess, Reader's Digest version of the mission, vision, and goals of each of your organizations and festivals, and why you're part of it, why you either founded it, joined it, what makes it your passion to be where you are. And I'm just going to go in the same order I did. So Aisha, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, well, Women in View is an organization that has been, it's been around for about 14 years. And the main mission of our organization is to really advocate and work on greater diversity in Canadian media, and in particular around women or women identifying. And we do that through a number of different initiatives, and we've become quite known for the report that we released that you just mentioned. About 3 days ago, we released the latest one. And I joined this organization because out of personal experiences in the industry itself, out of things that I've noticed, I also teach film, and sort of really being excited by an organization that has a good track record of having done a lot of work and had some exciting ideas about what they wanted to do for the future. And I'm particularly interested in this piece also of Black, Indigenous, and women of color. So I joined the organization about 6 years ago as a board member. So that's the short version.
Excellent. All right. Tanya, do you want to add to what you had mentioned? I mean, I know because you started the festival, why don't we go back then?
Yeah, well, for me, because you asked, what was the driving force of that? I started my career back in 1977. So I think being one of the first people, woman or man, one of the first people to be on screen, to be in the mainstream in our industry really showed me sort of a lot of the lack, a lack of crews, definitely directors and writers, people in front of the camera. And I think starting by the early 80s, I had been part of different groups, from the Black Film Video Network to the ACTRA Black Coalition group that we tried to start back in the early 80s. And I would also speak at a lot of, from the government organizations to Telefilm to other funding agencies, just about my experience and about what it was like working in the industry. And then eventually I moved to Los Angeles in '87 because of everyone telling me how much I was working in Canada and how lucky and fortunate I was, even though I wasn't making a living doing what I love to do. I moved to Los Angeles, and it was just like night and day, just the amount of opportunities that existed for me. And then finally being able to, be on a show, which took the next 20 years of my life. But I think I would still always be going back to Canada and speaking at different, if I had $1 for every roundtable discussion I sat on through the 90s. And by the year 2000, I felt that we were talking about something, but it had become a checkbox for most organizations to have this conversation, but nothing was actually happening. And my frustration from that created the desire that I have to want to do a platform. And everyone at the time, there was no concept at that time of all racial diversity people working together. That just had never existed. Now we talk about it like it's nothing, but that did not exist. I actually brought together groups that were from the Indigenous community, groups from the Black community, groups from the Asian community and the Latino community to say, let's work together. And none of them wanted to. This was back in 2000. So I founded Real World with that concept in mind, that we would all work together and push together and unify our voices together. And I love the fact that in the last, I'd say 3 years, that has now become the reality. But that you have to think back 20 years ago, that was not the reality. Even among people of color, they were not working together.
It's interesting. Sorry, before I go over to Carol. So do you think, you just mentioned that there's been a real shift, you would say, in the last 3 years where you are seeing that now?
There was a small shift 3 years ago, and then there's a large, I would say, a huge shift in the last year.
Yeah.
But people still, even 3 years ago, it was mostly about lip service and talking about it and saying they were doing something, but doing so little that it was not really of value. And also funding organizations like Real World and other organizations, giving us so little that, you would basically just on just your desire alone keep these things going, because we were not funded in the way that our white counterparts were. And we knew that, and we would speak about that. But there's been an awakening in the last 12 months, 10 months, let's say, that my nervousness, because I'm a cynical person anyway, my nervousness is that it won't last. And
Right.
so we need to keep our foot on the pedal and just keep hammering home that these cannot be short-term changes over the next couple of years, that we have to look at long-term systemic change that has to happen in this industry.
I want to be optimistic and say it is no longer acceptable to go back to the way things were. And I want to challenge your cynicism and say there is going to be change, and we are going to see that pendulum move. And, we won't have time to go into the whole report that I hope, Aisha, you'll talk about, but we are seeing that needle move ever so slowly. And even though the results aren't great, especially for the Indigenous community, it is better than the last report, and it's better than the report before that. And I hope we'll go into it. It looks like we just lost Carol, and she did mention she was having some technical difficulties. So I'm going to skip Carol for now and go to Leslie, and hopefully we'll get her back shortly. Leslie, you're on mute. No, you went back on mute. You were off and you went back.
We're muting. Katie. She's listening to me in the back room. I'm going to let you mute and unmute. So I want to say, first of all, thank you so much for joining us. And Women in View, we shared that yesterday with all the festival delegates, filmmakers from all over the world. We shared the report, and it became a platform for our discussion as part of the 11th annual Directors Roundtable discussion. So it was really generated a powerful, impactful conversation with filmmakers from around the world. I started the Female Eye in 2001 when I hit the film festival circuit with my debut film. And I was going to festivals all over the world, a lot in America and in Canada. Well, actually, I couldn't get my film screened in any festival in Canada, but it screened a lot in the UK and a lot in America and in other parts of the world. But anyway, needless to say, there were no women directors. I was maybe one among 5 women directors attending these international film festivals. And it raised a question for me. And at the time, the question was, are there no women directors, or are their films not getting programmed at these international events? So I, with my partner Norma Hoy at the time, decided to launch an event called the Female Eye Showcase Films for a weekend. It was in November 2001, and we showed 42 films directed by women, and women from America. American women directors joined us from LA and New York. We had filmmakers from a lot from Toronto, which blew my mind. I had no idea that in Toronto alone, we had so many independent women filmmakers. I had no idea. So it opened this whole other thing, which was the Toronto Filmmakers Series, which has been a kind of a staple program of the festival for many, many years. So that's how the festival started. And I don't know what else you asked me to speak to. I think that was it, right?
Just why you started it, which
That's
I think
it.
yeah. And I just have to, I mean, I actually don't have to, but as I'm sure anyone who's watching knows, but Tanya alluded to her 20-year career, but didn't mention that it was as Dr. Olivia Winters on The Young and the Restless. So I just feel the need to say
No,
that.
actually, it's a 45-year career. It's only 20 years with Real World.
Sorry, yes. But you failed to mention that little show that we all watched you on. So Lord knows I did. All right. Well, and so unfortunately, we seem to have lost Carol. So hopefully she'll be able to join us. You know what? I would love just to spend a little bit of time. Aisha, I don't want to put you on the spot, but would you be willing to share just some of the information that came out of that review? And what we can do is, as Leslie Ann has already said, we can share that summary that went out this week. But I would love for you to talk a little bit about the stats. And I know not to put words in your mouth, but I know that a conversation that we had with the WIFT Canada Coalition before our panel, and I think was weaved into this summary was information to make sure that people were aware that the survey results are talking about, you know, women in the industry, and it breaks down to Caucasian white women, people of color, and Indigenous. And it's important to note in that people of color, it doesn't distinguish between Black and persons of color. So the results could be slightly different if we also had that other stream. Am I right saying that?
Yeah, and I think there is a report that we're going to be bringing out in April that looks at those numbers in more detail and goes a bit more granular, and also gives recommendations of how to address that in particular. It's the first report that really takes the figures and breaks them down into Indigenous and Black and people of color. And I think the report in April will also then separate Black and people of color to give the stats for these 3 different categories as well. But I can talk a little bit about the report generally speaking. I haven't memorized all the figures and numbers, but I can talk a bit about the trends if you like. So the report that Karen is referring to is actually looking at stats from 2017 to 2019. So it covers 2 years of funding. And it looks at Telefilm and the Canadian Media Fund, in particular at both television and film, and looks at the micro budget and the 1 million plus funding streams. And I think the numbers are both encouraging and discouraging. Encouraging because we see an increase. We see about a 23% increase in women in TV directing. But what's kind of discouraging is that we don't really see a significant impact on diversity. So although in 2019 you have about 50% or more women directing in TV, you only have 12% that are Black and Indigenous or people of color. And it's even worse when you look at writers and cinematographers, where the numbers haven't moved almost, it seems, for Black and Indigenous and people of color. And in Indigenous category in particular, there's, you know, we kind of see numbers that have walked a bit backwards. So that's really worrying. And when you look at film in particular, you also see that in the big budget category of over $1 million, you see no Black, Indigenous, or people of color. So that's also sort of alarm bells for us. So even though you see more women in that category, you don't see any BIPOC representation. So, and as I said, there will be a report coming out in April that looks at those figures a little bit more in detail. So.
Great. Yeah, I believe the full report is 75 pages, so it's a lot of information to dissect. We have shared the executive summary in the comments, so if you haven't already looked at it, I strongly encourage you to. And it, you know, it goes without saying, but you know, it's, you know, we know that more women hire women. You know, yeah. Indigenous women will hire more Indigenous women. So it's a matter of making sure that we get these women to those positions to be able to do that. One of the things I'd like to talk a little bit about is, and I think some of us had this conversation at St. John's Festival, and then also at the TIFF reception that women WIFT Toronto did. Tanya, I know you were there. What has changed in this last year for you with the pandemic? And that can be good and bad. Like, what has it allowed you to do? What have you been handicapped by? And what does the festival look like this year? And I would love you to talk a little bit about the Real Access that you launched last year.
I only see the positive that happened through COVID, actually. That's because I'm a pessimist, so things can only go up from where I stand. First of all, we've been talking about doing things online for a long time at Real World, but the technology was expensive, and there was never the energy or the time to relearn everything, because it just sucks up every bit of time you have just to create the programs you already have existing. I love that COVID forced us. We did a crash course from I think March to May in how we would completely, reassess not just the festival but all the programs that we did, how we could re-envision them online, and that was the hardest 2 months of my life because I don't even want to like check texts. It's like just completely different generation to me in how we can use technology. But I think what has definitely been great about the experience is I don't think we'll ever go back to a 100% on-site festival. I think the most we would do is go back to a hybrid where it would be some on site, but we've always been a national organization, and we were really able to expand ourselves into every province and into the territories in a way that we wanted to for 19 years, but we couldn't physically. And now we have producers, creators, and crews from Prince Edward Island right across to Vancouver and in the territories that are now brought under our umbrella. And it changed the way that we create these, Zoom panels or just StreamYard panels or online panels that we do. But it also changed our interaction in a more intimate way, because I think people were struggling to, how do you create that sense of when you have a lot of people in person at an event where lots of people can break off into little pieces and have little conversations. How I started to re-envision that is stop thinking like an on-site. The online is not just the online of your on-site. So we created lots of tiny micro meetings, but many more of them where it was just distributors meeting with 10 filmmakers, where it was just, to get out of that concept that you needed 500 people at an event for it to be successful, we found our successes came from having 20 people, 15 people, and that the meetings were more meaningful now.
Right.
I see that Aisha wants to jump in on this. No, I thought you were going to say something about that.
No, I actually was really very much nodding along, because I think the experience of Women in View has been somewhat similar, because we were depressed about the idea of not having the 5 in Focus Indigenous iteration in person. But then, as you were speaking, I was like, yes, exactly. The benefit has been that we've been able to reach across the country, include people that we wouldn't otherwise. So I'm just very agreeing enthusiastically.
Yeah, and I think it was helpful for our sponsors. I think before, our sponsors weren't really aware of what Real World did, but they sort of gave us some money and they left us alone. This brought our sponsors in more as partners for us. We created more meaningful conversations with them. And they were able to see the value in a more quantifiable way than they could before, when we just opened the doors to a cinema or opened the doors to a venue that we were just having industry panels at. They were really able to see the impact. And I think it changed also their views on how important the work that we're doing is. They could hear firsthand the engagement that they could see in written form, and people saying how their careers had changed and the opportunities that had opened up to them because of programs like Real World. I think that shifted everything. And then, totally by chance, because same with Women in View, we had done a report called Changing the Narrative before all this happened. And so we launched that. This was about Black, Indigenous, people of color in the screen industry. It was men and women, but trying to understand what their situation was like, a snapshot view of it now. And we launched that in March. And then 2 months later, everyone was demanding to read the report. I think normally no one would have really cared about the report that much, to tell you the truth, or would have read it. And then we had launched our Access Real World, which was our hiring platform. And I think in normal circumstances, that would have just been that would have just gone out there and we would have promoted it. But now it was, everyone wanted that platform. People wanted to hire people. People wanted to find out where people were. And it was we made it such a transparent tool, because we looked at IMDb, and of course we couldn't afford to do it like an IMDb, but I love the fact that anybody can look at talent, anybody can find talent. We wanted to make it that. So that's some of the changes, but I don't want to take up all the time, but then we can talk about how it changed staff too, which was huge.
Yes, I will. I'm going to ask Carol to chat, because we got Carol back, luckily. I will say, I mean, this is what I love too, is like, I think to your point, seeing the optimism in the pandemic is the access that we now have, to your point. Like, you're in LA, you might not have been in Toronto at this time of year to be part of this panel had it been an in-person event. So I feel like some of the pluses that the festivals have had, and, Women Making Waves at WIFT-Atlantic is on this weekend as well, is we're able to network online, but also see across the country and the world with people that we may not have had access to. So even like Banff Spark that was on this week. So there is definitely, even though you're having to do it from, your living room, wherever, but but you're maybe wearing your track pants on the bottom, who knows? But then there's also the other side of tech issues, like we just experienced with Carol, and making sure that there's Wi-Fi wherever you are. But on that note, Carol, I'm just going to throw it over to you. We were just asking you to, or each of us were talking about why you started, your organization. So in your case, obviously, Women in the Directors Chair, and then just talk a little bit about what's changed in the last couple of years, and hopefully on the upside.
Well, yes, there is the upside. I just to go backwards in time, 25, actually 30 years now, similar to Tanya, but not as elegant and successful in an acting career as Tanya. I started out as an actor, and I moved to British Columbia just around Expo 86, 87, around that time. So quite a long time ago. From growing up in Ontario. And shortly after that, our union split. The actors union here split away from the national, and there was a lot of acrimony. So one of the driving forces for my involvement was a call to healing, to find a way for the women, particularly in our industry or in our union, to feel heard and safe, and not to feel bullied and put into an adversarial position. So our women's committee, ACTRA here in British Columbia, formed a series of panel discussions where we were looking for role models, and we were looking for success stories, and looking for an appreciative approach, which was a kind of a feminist approach that wasn't about bashing men. It wasn't about taking sides. It was about finding a pathway forward in a healthy way. And out of that came feedback from our guests that said they wanted more. They wanted professional development. They wanted to see opportunities for non-stereotyped roles for women, and more control over the story. And so we also knew that the Banff Festival at the time was a world focused, global focused event, and we thought, let's go big or go home. So we went to Banff, and we decided that we would collectively create something with our sisters here from the Women in Film chapter in Vancouver, who introduced us to Sarah Diamond at the Banff Center, who is a mover and a shaker and a force of nature in and of herself, and a very strong feminist. And we created this space, Women in the Directors Chair, inspired by our friends from the South, from Chicago, who had been running a women's film festival called Women in the Directors Chair for years. We also were inspired by the boot camps in Australia, and also a smaller program called Dance in the Camera that Sarah and her team at the Banff Center had run for women dancers. So we combined all of our collective thinking, and that's how Sarah and Peg Campbell and Gabrielle Rose from Women in Film at the time, we all pooled our collective thinking in also a response to the demise of Studio D at the National Film Board. That all happened kind of at the same time. In 1995, it was closing, and in 1995, we were hearing that call that there was a space that needed to be filled, and so we created Women in the Directors Chair as a response to all of that, and particularly that, yes, while we saw women working in documentary and at lower budget levels, they were missing in the feature film and in the television series directing area. Now, flash forward 25 years, and we're still beating that drum. We're still trying to elevate women's voices in the feature film and television series area. But as Aisha's probably said, and I'm sorry I missed it, I'm having a tech nightmare day today. But the Women in View, the study, the executive summary that's just been released, says that there's been some movement, but it's not as much as we want. So there's good news and there's bad news. So in terms of Women in the Directors Chair, what's happened over the last 25 years, and I'll just mainly focus on the last 5, as you requested, Karen, but over that time, we've adopted, again, an appreciative approach whereby we're listening to the women directors who go through our program. We're listening to our colleagues at FMLI and Women in Film and Real World and Women in View, and we're constantly taking the temperature and evolving. And so as over the last year, we've evolved with all of you into an online space. We pivoted into the delivery of workshops on Zoom, which is, for the most part, been really successful. And on another level, a little bit frustrating and disappointing, because there's nothing like that in-person experience that really builds community. But what we've discovered is that we can certainly build community in this kind of a space, because we're focused on each other. We're looking at only, the head and shoulders, but we're forensically delving into each other's facial expressions and really intently grappling with the messages that are coming to us in every form that we can suck in to elevate our understanding, because there's no way that we can hide that what's happening in our facial expressions when we're on screen. There, you can duck under the table or you can turn off your screen, but it's there for all of us to see, and we're paying attention now. I think we're really paying attention to each other way more than we have been in our in-person scenarios. So there's an upside to that and a downside. So that's my thumbnail of where we've been and kind of where we're at right now.
Great, thank you. And Leslie, and you're on mute. Let Katie take it.
Katie, unmute me.
She did.
She did. Okay, so I echo a lot of what has already been said. We weren't sure whether we were going to go this year at this time. We moved to March last year at TIFF as a festival they support, so that was great. It's been a huge learning curve for me in terms of, for example, we had a lot, like Tanya was saying, we've had a lot more director panels. We had the International Short Filmmaker panel, we had the International Filmmakers panel and the North American Filmmakers panel, and there's been a lot of like smaller panels and so on, and but the thing is, we're not done yet. So we've been unpacking this edition. We're normally a 5-day film festival, and we have been delivering it since March 8th. So it has been the longest festival in 20 years of this festival, I'm telling you. And it's not over yet, because in June, we're going to be doing the script development and the live pitch and the honorary director tribute. And we're hoping to do some outdoor screenings with pop-ups in parks in Woodbridge and Toronto or Etobicoke. So we're not done yet. But one thing I have found is, from listening to the filmmakers, on one hand, it's great because we've been able to see the faces and have, participants on screen from Japan and Taiwan and Iran and the UK and Ireland and all over the world. But we are a festival where the filmmakers do travel to the Female Eye. So a lot of filmmakers travel to our annual event. So it's very much an in-person networking, holding hands, drinking, eating popcorn in the dark theater, watching film. What I'm hearing from the filmmakers is they're really missing seeing their films on the big screen, and they're really missing the live audience conversation following the screening. And we didn't do any live watch, because of our platform. So the other thing we found, our platforms that in of themselves really dictated the delivery of the films at the festival. So for example, Encore Plus was our partner for, and their requirement is most Canadian content. So a lot of our Canadian features and Canadian programs went to Encore Plus, and it was scheduled weekend screenings. We would have a premiere screening, but we didn't have like a premiere event. Do you know what I'm saying? So, and then TIFF, we could unpack more and deliver more foreign content over there. But again, we had nine film slots that we could fill. So normally we show 72 to 95 films, and we showed, I think maybe we had 20 programs in total between Encore Plus and TIFF a digital TIFF Bell Lightbox. So it's been different and a learning curve. And I think I agree with Tanya. I don't think we'll ever go back to I think we will continue to have a hybrid event in making space for the filmmakers who can't necessarily travel due to sanctions in their countries or what have you. But I do miss I miss the condensed festival experience of sitting in theaters and watching films with a lot of people, and I do miss the more short event cycle as opposed to like months of delivering the festival, which has been challenging. And I think the other upside is I think finally, now in the last 5 years, other organizations we are now truly not siloed. We are not siloing anymore. We are holding hands, hearts, and minds, and we are in this movement forward together. And I don't think that's going to change. I hope it doesn't change. I think we need to keep moving the needle forward and keep advocating for everyone, everyone, and especially the communities that have been underrepresented in the industry. And women need to keep mentoring and championing women. It's the only way this movement will be sustainable. Carol, what was it we landed on yesterday? Infiltrate, subvert, and maintain. That's where we're at.
Was that a conversation on the side?
No, that was my takeaway. That's what I'm going to put on the female IT shirts next year.
Leslie Ann and I co-hosted the annual Directors Roundtable yesterday, and it was a really heartfelt discussion among the filmmakers attending the festival, and 8 women directors were invited from the Women in the Directors Chair Career Advancement module. So we combined the cohorts of the Female Eye and Women in the Directors Chair together for the Directors Roundtable this year, and yeah, that was one of the things that came out of it, and Leslie Ann encapsulated it very succinctly. But it was that missing of being in each other's presence in person, and also recognizing that there's pushback. There's the male pushback or pushback from the patriarchy, let's say, that is making itself known. There's this sort of a well, it's not quiet. It's actually quite overt in some communities that there's push.
That was shocking. So one of the comments, Carol, was if women were saying, I want to crew with women, they had men saying in positions of power, that's discriminatory. You're discriminating. There wasn't just, and this was across like the continent. Like this was not like a handful of direct, it was global. A lot of pushback from the patriarchy. Yeah.
I want to throw it over to Tanya to talk about her producer program, because I think it's either still on or just wrapped, and talk a little bit about how that changed for this year for you. But I just want to also, again, I feel like, I want to go back to seeing a movie in a theater. I think it's a crime that some of these movies are getting released on, even though people have 60-inch TVs in their house now and it's the size of a small theater, there is nothing better than watching a film with an audience and sharing that experience. And I hope we are back there soon. But I also, to see the glass half full, again, I want to talk about the opportunity that being online has been able to offer us, and the access to people. And I do think there has been a lot more collaboration, and I hope to see more of that as we go as we go forward, and see more and more of this, and hybrid situations, as Tanya alluded to. But Tanya, I wanted to talk about the producing program, and then you touched on it to talk about later. So we're here now about the staffing opportunities that this has allowed us to possibly have.
Okay, I'm writing these down. These are 3 separate and very strong questions. So I'll start with. I'm
taking notes as well. That's why I keep looking down.
Before I get to the producers program with the staffing, because I just want to keep it all in the vein of kind of the discussion that we're having here now. It's I don't mind that we're shifting out of theaters, by the way. part of my my survival as a cynicist is that I'm incredibly adaptable. I see what the world is, and I create using the tools that the world is providing to move myself or my organization or whatever I'm advocating for forward. So it's been more than 10 years that very senior producers were saying cinema is dead. They've been saying that for a while. It will be a dinosaur that will eventually, in the form that we say we love, it will eventually be, almost like a museum, the last of. So I think the quicker we can wrap ourselves around that concept, in fact, we have been wrapping ourselves around that concept. We might be in denial about it, but that's what this last year has been. When I started my career, there were no streaming platforms. They weren't even VHSs yet. So then we moved into VHSs, and people were like, cinema is dead, because you could rent a VHS and take it home and watch it on your TV set. And then it was DVDs came out, and the world had changed. It shattered. Then there was Blockbuster. So everything was ruined now. There was Blockbuster. Then Netflix created the process where you could become this member, and DVDs got mailed to you. You watched them and mailed them back. That was the destruction of whatever was before. And then it has evolved, and now we have streaming platforms. So I don't know about the rest of you, but I almost never leave my house. I used to go to TIFF. I started going in 1977 because I was seeing films I could never see anywhere. I see more films that I could see anywhere in the world from the comfort of my home. I watch films from Nigeria, from India, all the way UK. I'm a massive watcher of Scandinavian dramas. These are things that were not even in existence. So moving forward, a film festival isn't even a film festival anymore. Forget just screening on screen. We now show web series. We show television. We show animation. We show everything. Back when I started Real World in 2001, we would have FedExed of reels of films, FedExed, where you would have to carry 2 massive reels to the cinema. They would have to be loaded up on reels and shown. I remember when we moved to screening DVDs, that filmmakers were so upset. They wanted the real film, or they did not want to screen at your festival. So I say all this to say, we will adapt. You will either adapt now or you will adapt later, but adaptation is the survival of our entertainment industry. And remember, we're not doing this for ourselves, and we're not even doing it for the filmmakers. We're doing it for an audience. Audience is the most important. How is it they would like their content is what we need really to be thinking about. So keeping that in mind, staff. I had to sit my staff down and go, forget what you know. I'm always about that. Forget whatever you know, whatever you think you know. Things are constantly moving and changing, and it's a forward moving. Whether you like it or not is not even time for you to consider that at that moment. You have to stay in front of whatever that curve is so that you're constantly bringing the vital tools, information, and experience that your filmmakers are going to need to survive in this changing global industry. So that's where I always see that that's our purpose, is to be educating, not the audience. The audience is going to change whether we want to do them or not, but the people who are creating the content, the people who are working in the environment of this content. We need to help them in how are they going to move forward, and how are they going to make a living and survive and get their stories told on whatever platforms come out that are for them. So the producers program talks to that. I had seen a gap in the fact that over the years, I always do an internal data, my internal reports. So I may not be sending out surveys and getting people answering things, but I love watching and seeing what is happening, what is changing, what is actually going on. And I talk to a lot of people. So what I saw was there were a lot of, especially in the Black, Indigenous, and a lot of other people of color, there were actors and there were directors and there were writers that were producing out of desperation. There were no producers for them to go to. There was like Jennifer Holness, Amos Adetuyi, there was like Damon Oliveira. There were literally 5 across Canada that were producing their career. So last year was when I wanted to put together, it's a 1-year program of which we're only we kicked off in February. So no, we're still very much in it, Karen.
Gotcha.
And these needed to be people who were not actors, they were not writers, and they're not directors. So that was key to applying for it. And you could not come with a project already, because part of the learning is how do you find a project. And we're working in the television concept, because television is where your bread and butter is going to be, not necessarily making features, especially in Canada. So we have focused that, with the help of our major sponsor on that is Bell Media, in how we're shaping a group of 12 people who are varied in gender and varied in racial diversity. And they come from Prince Edward Island, Quebec, Ontario, Alberta, Vancouver. We went across the gambit as best as we could. And they are learning in how they can be these producers. And it's a creative producer, but you also have to learn sort of all the grants and how to run a business, and how to talk to talent, and how to lure talent, and how to negotiate the contracts you need to negotiate. So it's a really interesting process. I love these 12 people now, and we have little powwows together, and they're just going to be. I'm excited that there'll be a generation of producers that we've not had yet in Canada that we can move forward with, if we can give them the right tools. And I'm excited to say that Karen hooked us up with WIFT Vancouver, and they've also helped out. But WIFT has also been very instrumental in helping out these producers as well.
It's all about collaborating, right?
It's all about collaborating.
Aisha, I just want to go a little bit back to Women in View in the report. Can you talk a little bit about, the process of that report and putting it together? I mean, I know Jill and Amber and everyone that was involved in it. It's like a massive process. So for those, it's one thing just to be able to read the summary and look forward to the 75-page document. But what is that process? Because I know you put one out. It's every 2 years. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct, actually. This particular report was looking at the stats from 2017 to 2019. So you're covering, I think, actually 3 years instead of 2 years, as I initially said. So the process initially is just two people, and I think that's Amber, who works at Women in View, and also Tracy, starting with the numbers that CMF and Telefilm release. And they release the names, and then sort of the work is because CMF and Telefilm don't ask people to identify as either women or men or whatever else, they had to do the work of going by the names and being able to identify based on that. And then when it was unclear, asking if people knew. And I think there was also work with Natalie Youngley to make sure that the process was kind of transparent and was respectful of how people identify. So it's a lot of work of doing it sort of manually, because Telefilm refuses to collect that kind of statistic. So they started sort of working on this report last year. So it's been taking almost a year to finalize. So it's, and I think what's interesting in this particular report is that we're not looking only at Telefilm and CMF, but we're also looking at, how does that work at CBC? And you see also the numbers for Chorus, Rogers, and Bell. And I think the idea is to look at organizations like the CBC and Telefilm that have announced targets. Mm-hmm. And then places like Chorus and Bell and Rogers that have not announced targets. And how does that then sort of show in the numbers? So there's a lot of work to be done, because you're looking at so many different organizations as well.
Right. Carol, do you want to talk a little bit about what you're doing for this year? Is there anything that you're changing as far as, because everything is online with Women in the Director's Chair? Hold on, you're on mute. Let Katie unmute you. Hold on.
Out of respect, going on mute. Yes, this year, we're just about finished our fiscal year right now. So we're wrapping up a whole year of being online. And big takeaways there. A big part of our program is working with actors, and ACTRA and UBCP ACTRA here in British Columbia are all part of sponsoring the program and being involved in the program. And so that part was very interesting this year, creating a Zoom space where it was more roundtables and breakout rooms where the directors could work with actors in a in a quiet space. So there was no sound pollution between rooms, if you will, in a hotel or in a classroom space. So that was a good thing. But we couldn't again be there blocking in the space. And so having cinematographers come in and talk about the pre-conceptualization process and pre-prep and storyboarding and how to manage that kind of change the conversation, if you will. So that's something that was different, very different for us, but we managed it. We as Tanya said, we envisioned something in a forward-thinking way. We weren't looking backwards. We're slightly lamenting, of course, not being in the same room together, but here we are. Our mandate was, we're not going to put on a workshop in an environment where it's unhealthy and unsafe for people. It's not worth people's lives. So that was a big discovery, that we could actually tackle some technical stuff, some pre-conceptualization work, and definitely the work of story consulting and leadership, mentorship, that sort of thing. It's very well suited to this online space. So we discovered that. We did push our deadlines this year. Our feature film award deadline was pushed to the fall last year. Our board, not to jump the gun, because we're going to make some big announcements later on, announcing our 25th anniversary, but hinting that we're going to be shifting our deadlines a little bit this coming year to accommodate more robust adjudication. One of our mandates from our board this year was to aim towards a 33% inclusivity of Indigenous women, Black women, and women of color, and being mindful of gender expression, gender identities, and sexual orientation and expression, and as well as geographic. And I'm really proud to say that overall, when we look back at our inclusivity rates of our participants, of director participants, and there are over 300 over the last 25 years, women, identifying women who've come through our programs, 33%, we've reached that this year. 33% are Indigenous women, Black women, and women of color. We haven't broken it down, but that's something that was quite astonishing for us this year, that it was actually achieved. Well, not astonishing because that's been our practice, but it's a prideful moment, because it means that we're moving in that direction. So it's good to see that the numbers are adding up. And in fact, this year, 42% of our director participants were Indigenous women, Black women, or women of color. So
Great.
yeah, so slight changes, but we will be making more announcements in the coming months, Karen. So not to preempt those sorts of things, but 25th anniversary, we're kind of excited. So
You're throwing us a teaser.
Yeah,
I want to do a little plug. I know I'm the moderator, but working at Women in Film and Television Toronto, we did a rebrand last year with our logo, which I don't know if you can see it, but it's WIFT-T. And it was really important to the board and the staff that we recognize that we are more than women. And it's not just film and television anymore. It's, really screen-based industry. Digital is massive, especially during the pandemic, but even before, when my time at the Academy, digital was massively growing and so fast. And Tanya, it's funny because you started talking about the reels, and I'm like, I just remember being in the UK for film circuit and carrying the reels from one theater to the other, and or dying because only one reel arrived. So, you're right. We adapt as we do. But there is, I have to say, I do watch parties at home now where we all queue up our film. I watched The Heat on Friday night with 5 friends, where we all press play now, and then we have a group chat, and it's like sort of the next best thing as opposed to going to theaters. But I personally still love being in a theater. But the silver linings of some of the stuff that's happened in the past year is the chapters of WIFT. There's 5 WIFT chapters along with Women in View. We created the WIFT Canada Coalition. We have a call every Monday, and we've been doing programming, and it's been amazing because we've been able to meet members across the country that we maybe wouldn't have otherwise. So I do think there's been a lot of, good things that have come out of this. We're going to be wrapping soon, and I would love if anyone has any questions, please put them in the comments now so that we can address them. We'll go for maybe about another 10 or so minutes. But I'd love to go around the table, as we would say, and talk a little bit about what you're looking forward to this year. Zoe's up there. Hi, Zoe, who received our Digital Trailblazing Award a couple years ago. Nice to see you here. I'll start with you, Leslie, because we haven't heard from you in a bit.
Sorry, what was the question?
What you're looking forward to, and it doesn't need to be about your festival, but what are you looking forward to in the next few months?
What am I looking forward to? I am looking forward to seeing my mother. I am looking forward to planning the industry initiatives, script development program, and some other programming that we didn't deliver in this period of time in March. I'm looking forward to writing. Actually, COVID was really good for me. The one positive thing that came out of the pandemic, is particularly in the first wave into the second wave, was I found myself, really delving back into my own creative work as a writer. I've been doing a ton of auditions, self-taped, which is insane, but it has its advantages as well. And I have been, so I finished a script. It's a femme-centric Western with a diverse group of women outlaws. It's set in 1873. I've won 10 finalist international screenwriting awards for it. I started submitting it at the beginning of the pandemic, and Telefilm Canada gave me support to do a final pass on that. I optioned another story from the UK, and I'm writing the treatment for that. So I'm excited about, I'm just in this, I lose myself in the character of story and writing, and I haven't been in the scripted space for a while, and I got a grant to shoot a short film in 2019 or 20 from Canada Council, but wasn't able to do it. It's about a 50-year-old woman. It's a great role, and I had to push everything, and so going to camera hopefully end of summer into September with The Curtain, which is the short film that I wrote to direct.
So you're not busy at all, in other words.
No.
Jeez. Aisha, how about yourself?
Well, I think I'm excited about a couple of things professionally and personally, but professionally speaking, I work for Hot Docs as well, and the festival is online this year, and I'm excited about some of the industry events that will allow us still to meet people from across the world, and for watching some of the films that have been programmed by the international programmers. For Women in View, I'm really excited about this 5 in Focus Indigenous program that we're kind of in the middle of right now, and that's wrapping up with a big April 20th industry day. So I kind of want to hear how that all goes, and I'm excited for the 5 women that are taking part in it. Personally speaking, I'm kind of finishing shooting a web series for TELUS, so that's wrapping up next month, and then I want to take some time off. So
what's that?
I know. I actually don't know. Sometimes I'm like, there's a pandemic.
I feel like, I'm sure you can, sounds like you guys can all relate. I feel like we're busier now because it's harder to separate personal stuff from life, because work is right here in front of you all the time. Tanya, how about yourself?
I'm excited for a lot of things. I'm excited that I'm still working in this industry after 45 years, because that's challenging at best. And then I don't know, if for people who may not know Real World, our focus is only Canadian content. So I'm always excited to see the new filmmakers that are out there. We don't spend any of our energy on international, so it's like always knowing what Canadian content is out there. and all the new initiatives that we're working on, including there's a real focus for us at Real World about the what I call the infrastructure of the industry. I think a lot of people have been for a long time focused on who's creating the stories and the authentic voices that we've been, talking about. So I think people are doing that. They weren't doing that when we started at Real World. And now I want to focus on the fact that there's almost no representation in casting directors, in agents, in managers. All that is key to the development of talent. The fact that a lot of our producers still have to go outside of Canada to attach actors because we don't have the bankable stars, especially within the racially diverse community. And personally, I guess my struggle has always been personally for me that I wear the hat of woman. So I deal with issues that are as women in this industry, but I also deal with race, but not just race, being Black on top of that. And my personal focus is that we do start to get really minutia in the data we're collecting, because the Black journey is completely different. The Black feminine journey is very different than the Indigenous feminine journey, than the Asian feminine journey, than the South Asian feminine journey. And we need never to lose sight of that. And I'm very skeptical about baskets that we, large arching baskets, I should say, that put too many of us in there, because just within the Black community alone, as a woman, people from African who are recently from Africa or from Africa now, immigrants that are coming to Canada that are Black, Caribbean people that are Black and female. These are all very
different.
We can no longer just use a hammer that we've been using for the last 100 years. We're going to have to go in with a scalpel, and we're going to have to really collect data so we can really understand what individual people are struggling with, and so that we can change those, work on those. But we can't work on them right now, because I can tell you my struggle as a Black woman has been equally hard with white women.
Right.
I've had to deal with their racism and their biases on top of what women in general in the mainstream have dealt with men. I deal with all of it. And I deal with the racism from Asian people and from South Asian people and from Middle East people and from Latino people. So there is, there's not enough discussion yet around how we treat each other as women, how we treat each other racially in the world. And that's what I'd love to see personally moving forward.
Yeah, and I'm sure Joan Joan Jenkinson at the Black Screen office is probably hoping to dive into some of that. I just want to touch for Sarah. Hi, Sarah. If you can't find the report, you can email me at kbruce@wift.com and I can send you the link, or just Google Women in View on-screen report to 2021, and I'm sure it'll come up. Or if you have a subscription to Playback, they posted it in there this week. But we will get you that summary report. For anyone out there that also can't find it, you feel free to email me or the festival or Women in View directly, and I'm sure they'll be happy to share it. Sorry?
It's also on the website.
Yes, yeah, Women in View website. Carol, I don't think we've heard from you.
What I'm excited about?
Yes.
I'm excited I'm not in the dark anymore. It's been a technology day for here. Yeah, I'm excited for the conversations that are coming, that I'm having, that I'm looking forward to. I'm excited for the potential and actual germination of collaborations that we're looking forward to for our 25th anniversary and beyond. And I'm sort of looking around the room here for collaborators that we're in conversation. And I'm excited about, and this is something that's maybe doesn't, is a bit counterintuitive for excitement, because it's the unknown and it's a bit concerning and it's a bit messy. I'm excited for the discovery, or the drive towards the discovery of generative images, or ways of being more inclusive in how we name things. I know that, Karen, you were talking about the rebrand for Women in Film and Television Toronto, or Women in Film Toronto. And our board is talking about, women in the director's chair. women means so much more. I sit on the Actor National Women's Committee, and that's a very serious conversation that's being had right now. And so I'm very proud and excited and about those conversations, because they're messy. We don't have all the answers, but there's such goodwill towards it, and I think that that's a really good sign. And I just want to say, I hope we have more of these kinds of conversations among our organizations. Leslie Ann, you used the word silos earlier, and I think that that's something we need to really eradicate, at least among ourselves, and hopefully in our whole industry, and globally too. Let's just take over the world. I just think that it's really important to share best practices and make it better for everyone.
Just before we wrap, we did get a question in, and I feel like this is could be a long answer, but maybe Tanya, if you have a couple Coles Notes versions of I don't know if you've seen it. Do you want me to read it out to you from Camille?
No, I see it. I see. The question was really about how we create bankable stars. And because my focus is, mostly about race, it's very hard to find Black actors, Asian actors, who are bankable, South Asian actors in Canada, and women in particular not there. So I would say in the Coles Note version is, first of all, it starts with our industry understanding and respecting the importance of actors. I find that is not the priority. Many times that for some reason the directors are God, but really actors are God, because an audience is responding to actors. They go out and they watch content because they have attached themselves to actors. And so I think between Telefilm, between CMF, between the broadcasters, they are all in a great position to put their actors front and center in everything that they do. I think in award shows, we should constantly be having actors do those presentations. Let's learn a lot from what they're doing in Hollywood. I mean, it's not like the Oscars and the Golden Globes and those are really about the directors and about the people creating the content. It really is a fashion show because it puts their actors front and center. An audience is hungry for that, and we're not feeding our Canadian audience any of that. So they're going to other countries to get that. And that they should be up there presenting these awards. These are the people that you want the audience constantly following. We don't have any nighttime shows, which, talk shows. I'm not aware of any. Maybe there are some up there. And people literally get obsessed with their actors. They want to know what breakfast food they're eating, what dogs they have, where they like to get their hair washed. I mean, these are things that we don't find maybe that important, but remember, we're not here for each other. We're here for an audience, and we need to feed them what their need is. And by feeding them what their need is, they will run to the theaters and they'll run to their broadcast channels to watch the actors they adore. And so I don't think we've even started that process.
Yeah, and I know Shamir and Stefan have started the Black Academy, and Jennifer Irons she's just opened her own company called Meta, I believe, for specifically about casting for Black individuals. So I think
that Jennifer is one of our alumni and got and it was going through our programs that made her. I talk now a lot to our alumni about infrastructure, and many of them who were on a road to trying to be a screenwriter or a director or producer have now decided to move out and become part of that infrastructure.
That's great. I just want to read out, in case anyone missed it, Zoe is just saying to anyone who's listening that is a cinematographer DOP, that if you are not already a member of the Canadian Society of Cinematographers, that you should be. They are offering diverse programs and striving more for gender parity. We do have to wrap. I do also want to do one last plug for WIFT Toronto. Because we're doing everything online right now, we have the biggest mentorship program in the country. We offer one-on-one mentoring over a 6-month program, thanks to Telefilm. Last year, as part of our strategic priorities and commitment, we made a promise that at least 50% of our mentees would be from the Black, Indigenous, person of color, LGBTQIA+, or an underrepresented community. 56% of our mentees are from that. What we're hoping is in the next 5 years, the mentors will also reflect that. If you are not in Toronto and looking for a mentor, I'm plugging my WIFT Toronto to show you that we can provide mentorship across the country. I want to thank each and everyone. I know that some of you are still having problems with that link. I put in the link for Women in View, the website directly. Again, if you're having problems finding it, you can email me directly at kbruce@wift.com and I will send it to you. It is an extremely important review to read. And as my colleague and friend Maxine Bailey says, we are not each other's competition. We are each other's allies. We are here to help lift each other up. Empowered women empower women.
Here you go.
On behalf of the Female Eye Film Festival, Leslie, go ahead.
I just want to say, I want to thank all of you. Karen, I want to thank you for moderating. I want to thank all of the panelists. It's great to see your faces. Tanya, it's been a while. It's great to see you. And congratulations on all your initiatives. It's absolutely stellar. It's exciting. And we'll be sharing on our social platforms, whatever you're doing. So let's connect on Twitter, Instagram. Let's connect. This is the last, tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. our program is finished at Digital TIFF Bell Lightbox. I encourage you to check out the films. They're great. Encore Plus, we have the Eastern Winds. It's a celebration of East Coast women directors on Encore Plus, and we have other films streaming there today. It ends tonight, but tomorrow, TIFF Bell Lightbox, 9 a.m. to complete. And I hope that you join us again in June, date to BA, to celebrate more films and our script development program and all of that. And by the way, we're going to keep the Women in View report on the Female Eye website. So for those of you who are going to Female Eye under industry initiatives, all of these wonderful women are there, as well as the link to the Women in View report as well. It's also there.
Excellent. All right, Carol, Tanya, we lost Aisha, Leslie Ann. Thank you all for joining us today, and for everyone in the audience, thank you for being here. We love seeing the comments come up.
Can we take a photo? We need to get a photo.
I did take one with Aisha, so I will send it to you. But take one now if you want. Sure, we're just missing Aisha.
I always have a problem with this. Okay, Carol, will you take a photo?
Yeah, I can.
I'll make everybody disappear if I try to do it. I know I'll put the wrong shift key or something. I'm still learning.
Okay, here we go. And capture.
Oh, that sounded like a real camera there. That was. Well, thank you all for joining. And again, Ella Cooper sends her regards. I know that she's working on a mothering symposium. So if you don't already know about Black women film, look them up as well, Ella Cooper. And again, she passes on her regrets not being able to join us today. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday and stay safe.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye, ladies. Thank you so much.